Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first breakout session, 5 Techniques for a Meaningful Presentation. My name is Candace Thorson. I'm managing editor at GovLoop, and I just want to thank you so much for being here. So today's session, we're going to talk about how to make a good presentation. So each one of us, hopefully in the past, but certainly in the future, has really nailed a presentation. You walked away from it and thinking, wow, I really kicked butt, you know? But there's a lot of work to get to that point. And so what we're going to do is cover 5 specific techniques that you can use to make your presentation more meaningful and engaging. I have a few reminders to go over, some housekeeping stuff. So we have really great additional resources that are available for you to download from the resources tab, including the slide deck you're about to see, which, just to whet your appetite, is really, really good. If you're in need of a closed captioning feature, just look at the show captions icon at the bottom of your screen. We don't want you to have technical problems, but they do happen. So if you run into trouble, just put a message in the Q&A tab, and Julia, my colleague, will help you out. You can also use the Q&A portal to ask questions of the speaker, and please absolutely drop them in because she's interested in answering them throughout the presentation. We also have the open chat feature, and as you probably know, that's an area, a forum where you can just openly converse with people and other attendees. If you miss anything, don't worry, because tomorrow in your inbox, we're going to be sending you a link to the entire session on demand so you can review it and catch up on anything you missed. And then finally, we're giving out 1 CPE credit for your participation today. So there are 3 things you need to do to get it. You need to stay and participate for the entire breakout session, take all the polls, and we're going to have 4 of them, and then fill out the post-event CPE evaluation form to get your credit. And so that form you can find in the resources module in the console, or you can go back to the main environment in the resources center. But we'll email you once we confirm that you've met all the requirements and all that stuff. We'll email you directly the CPE credit. The poll questions, by the way, when they come up, they're going to pop up as a box. So that's where you'll answer them, and then you'll hit submit, and you'll be able to submit your answers. So with all of that done, today's speaker is Sabrina Amjad. She is co-founder of Vanbri Consulting. So I want to thank you so much for being here, Sabrina. She has really great insights, and like I said, her presentation is really great. I enjoyed reviewing it beforehand. So Sabrina, it's all yours.
Thank you, Candace. Good morning, everyone. As you're joining, first and foremost, welcome. Please feel free, as you're joining in, feel free to drop your, say, LinkedIn information. I would love to know who's in the room. If you could drop in your LinkedIn information in the chat, maybe your role, your organization, or the agency you're currently supporting. I would love to know who's actually listening to this, if you will. Thank you for being here. Fantastic. Great. We see a couple of things coming in. Fantastic. Awesome. Welcome. Okay. So getting started, if you will. So whether you're in policy, IT, communications, or transformation, the way you present doesn't just inform. It decides what gets funded, what gets prioritized, and what gets trusted. The room is listening. You know that, and I know that, right? And what you say next changes everything, right? So I'm Sabrina Amjad. So you've heard Candace say, thank you, Candace, founder of Vanbri Consulting. We're an SB-approved firm based in DC. I've worked across Middle East, North Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, and I've spent the last 2 decades helping leaders from public sector executives such as yourself to private sector leaders, Wall Street, government, international organizations, navigate their highest stake moments. And I've learned that success doesn't just hinge on data or policy or even the strength of the solution. Today, ladies and gentlemen, it isn't about presentation skills. It's about presentation power. Because in every high-stakes setting, your words can either trigger clarity or confusion. momentum, or resistance. Right? So let's get into it. Okay. So let's talk about the moment we're in. Whether you're in government or private industry, presentations, you and I both know, aren't just updates anymore, right? They are moments of consequence. One room, one decision, and the entire trajectory of a program can change. And the bar is rising. Today, your audience is looking for the speed of Amazon and the clarity of a TED Talk. That's hard to do, even from our government officials, right? And inside organizations, stakeholders want less explanation, but more direction. They want fewer slides, but they want a stronger story. Here's the reality. Most initiatives don't fail because of strategy. They fail because the story didn't land or stand out. Gartner puts it at 70% failure. And from my own work across federal agencies, global banks and ministries, I've seen it time and time again. The teams were smart, the data was solid, but the message didn't move people. Okay. So you may be wondering, well, why you? Why me? Why am I here today? Right? Let me take a moment to ground this conversation in where I've been and why it matters now more than ever. I started in Washington, D.C., supporting federal agencies, navigating waves of shifting mandates. Back then, it was all about, and this is a few years ago, right? It was all about digital modernization. Then, and I believe we're still doing this, we went to cloud migration. From there, it was compliance chaos, right? Today, it's all about AI. But the truth is, the pattern has not changed. Complexity is the constant. What has cut through? Clarity. Always has, still does. In New York, I worked at the intersection of regulation and customer experience. We flipped the narrative from internal process to external impact. And that shift unlocked buy-in, faster adoption, deeper thinking. Regulators listened. Executives moved because the story had changed. Across every region I've worked, from the Department of Veterans Affairs here in the US to the justice modernization efforts in Abu Dhabi, QB Insurance in Australia, the pattern has been the same. Adoption accelerates when the message shifts from the systems to the people. If anything, the journey has taught me something simple but very powerful. Impact follows when the story gets sharper. Let me say that again. Impact follows when the story gets sharper. That's what it's all about. Giving you tools to sharpen your story. Okay. As we move forward again, thank you, Candace. Here is a set of questions that I want to get to know you. And as if you're just coming in, please put your name in. I would love to know which organization you're supporting, your role, if you will. Let's talk about you. The challenge is for you to think about the energy you bring into a room before the first slide even appears. So please fill out this questionnaire. Which of the following best describes your leadership style under pressure?
And everybody is filling this out, by the way, before we even got to say the question. So this is really I found this very interesting because it occurred to me that I think that at different points in my career and in even different situations, I would have answered this differently. So you know, I think that probably depending on the situation, one leadership style is probably a little bit more effective than another. which is probably not very helpful for people answering this question now that I verbalized that. But these are very interesting answers. I'll give everybody a few more seconds to answer. And just as a reminder, you need to answer all the poll questions in order to get the CPE credit. But so I'll just give everybody a little bit, but very, very interesting answers. So yeah. Is there one that you would say you are, Sabrina?
You know, that's a
Or
great question, Candace. I know what I do believe I'm a directive. I've found that of myself in many fronts, but I would like to think of myself as a collaborative and adaptive as well. So it depends on the situation.
yeah.
And I think we all portray these leadership styles in different situations and under pressure under different things. But it's what exemplifies you as a person is where we're trying to get to. So yeah, great,
Okay, I'm gonna stop the poll now.
great.
So most people are collaborative, between collaborative and adaptive.
Collaborative and adaptive. And that's really interesting, you know, because as we talk about it, collaborative is where you're consulting others. So it seems like we have a very lean in team that wants to get other people involved. That's fantastic. Adaptive is where I will adapt and I will maybe adjust and maybe even change my opinions or decisions based on where we're going, right? And avoidant, even though a lot of people, you know, say, you know, my avoid in itself is a negative word, but what it means is I delay tough decisions until I know the lay of the land. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something that you're doing. You're wary, you want to make sure. So this is an interesting crowd. So we seem to have a lot of people who are leaning in, who want to learn more, and you're adjusting based on what you know. So hopefully the tools we share with you today is going to be helpful. Okay, thank you for that. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, great. Let's start with the first technique, storytelling, right? Stanford research shows that stories are remembered 22 times more than raw facts. Why, you may ask? Well, because they engage empathy, emotion, memory. They build trust. The best presentations don't lead with what? They lead with why. What human consequence is behind your data? That is what they'll remember. Remember, you're just not presenting. You're telling the story of the art of what's possible. Okay? So, you know, I know we asked you a question already. As we go to, before we go into the example, for all the folks that are in the room right now, I would love for you to drop in maybe a memorable quote you heard, something that resonated with you, something that really struck your fancy. Maybe it was a presentation you did or you attended someone who was giving a briefing. It has stuck with you. Can you drop that? Maybe it's a phrase in the chat. It would be really good to kind of, as we go through the next example, think about what storytelling means to you. That'd be great. Okay.
Oh, I like these. I'm looking at the quotes in the chat. There was one actually that I heard when I was in college. I was a philosophy class, and I might butcher this a little, but Heraclitus said that you never step in the same river twice. So you can can go in the same situation, whatever, but it's never really the same because people are different, whatever. And I've always remembered that. And the other one is I actually saw this on a magnet from Oscar Wilde, and it said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." And I've always remembered that because we're all individual people. So trying to, model yourself and pretend it's good to be whoever, it's not you. So
So true, Candace. And you're right. I love the chats coming through. 80% of success is showing up. So right.
yeah,
What you
we have a
think you
common
hold,
goal.
I love it. Yes. Keep
It
them
takes
coming.
only
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
These are
Okay,
really great.
these are great. So we'll move into the example as you're kind of, thinking through it, if you will. I seem to be stuck here, Canvas, for
Oh,
some.
bloom where you were planted.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we
fall
go.
down
There we
seven
go. We
times.
got it.
Right.
Okay, great. So let's, for example, we talked about storytelling. Let's focus on this case study, right? For example, let me take you into a room at the Census Bureau. What if you were trying to get funding for automation of data capture technology for the census? Remember that occurs every 10 years, right? Anyone from the Census Bureau here? I didn't get to see all the folks in the chat. Maybe, right? Remember, this is an example. What if the team who you presented with was focused on system specs, latency, uptime, maybe the back-end processing? What do you think would happen? The story probably did not land the way you wanted it to, right? Maybe you didn't get the required funding. But what would happen then if you didn't get the funding for the automation? Let's dig a little bit deeper. So if you have a manual census counting process, certain communities would remain undercounted, right? And when you're
Yeah.
not counted, you're not funded. So not having automation of data capture technology would translate directly to fewer dollars, fewer services, and fewer opportunities in those undercounted communities. So what if you flip the script? So next time, maybe we start with a different story. What if your focus this time around was a rural Native American community who was undercounted by 37% because there was a struggle to access homes in remote areas, or identify dwellings like trailers, temporary shelters, or multifamily residences? Or maybe the focus on the fact that these communities do not have the appropriate number of census takers. What does it mean? You would showcase that this community maybe had access to no school, no broadband, no ambulance. For 10 years, you ask the decision makers, what happens when a certain group is invisible on the map? You talk about the missed opportunities and the generational divide that occurs because the story is not being told. Maybe this story moves them, and maybe it moves the funding as well. So remember, in government, your story isn't just a tactic, it's a tool for equity. Let's take a moment for that to sink in. Okay. Candace, so I'd love to go to the next set of questions. And as we do that, I'd love for you to think about the challenge to ask yourself, are you showing up with clarity or just content? What's the difference between a good presentation and a transformational one for you? Over to you, Candace.
Sure. So the answers are the courage to say what matters, a message that sticks, an audience that feels seen, and all of the above. Interesting because, there is a big difference from, doing a good presentation and thinking, oh, I wasn't boring, people seemed interested and all that stuff, as opposed to really doing something that's more transformational and has a long-term impact. I
So
guess you don't necessarily know once you walk out of the room or whatever, whether you've actually, um, well, I guess often you don't realize if you've actually done what you needed to until after the fact, huh? Because just because you're getting, positive reception and smiles and all that stuff doesn't necessarily mean you accomplished your mission.
that's right. And Candace, also think about the fact is, in terms of when you're trying to become a better presenter, a person who's telling the story. What is in your mind that sets up a transformational way of moving forward? Is it all of this, or is it maybe just having one of this that makes it really drive it out the door, right? And these are the techniques we're focusing on today. So, yeah,
We'll give everybody a few more seconds to answer.
absolutely.
There
Not
seems to be some
questions.
consistency in the answer, by the way. Just saying.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay. Okay.
which I'm not surprised about. But yeah, we'll give everybody just a few more. And just as a reminder that, you know, get the CPE credit, you need to take all the polls. So this is the second of 4. So, um, okay, I'll end the poll now and show the results. So not a surprise as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And that has been the most common answer that I have received in the past, whenever I've asked folks to take this. It's interesting, a message that sticks and the courage to say what matters are also close second in terms of people do think that's true. So that's interesting. So, but it's a given that all of the above seems to be the happening answer here. So, great. Okay. Moving on to our second technique, emotional resonance. Okay. So emotion drives 95% of decisions, according to neuroscience. People don't act on logic alone. They act on what they feel. It isn't a trick. It's actually how our brains work. Your audience's brains are activated 3 times more when you engage in emotional storytelling. Think about the last presentation you recently delivered. Are your presentations triggering frustration, urgency, pride? If not, they're probably not moving anyone, and it's probably triggering fatigue. Because remember, people will forget your numbers, but they will remember how you made them feel. So to that, let's put this in an example. Another case. I'm having a hard time getting to the next slide canvas.
No, let's see.
What? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
That work? Okay.
Yes, it did. Thank you. Okay. So let's take another example. What happens when you put emotion in action? Let me take you inside a GSE boardroom. Maybe you're supporting a digital mortgage tool designed for first-time and underserved buyers. And it has stalled. The business case was solid, but the energy flat. No urgency. There is no who does this. So you reframed the story. You didn't lead with timelines or user flows this time. You led with the story of what happens when you don't have a digital mortgage tool. Maybe you focus on the impact of the single mother who lost her home because of a 7-day processing delay. Maybe highlight the fact that her boxes are packed, her lease has expired. For 2 weeks, she and her kids are sleeping on the floor of a relative's living room. You reframe it as a tech issue, not as a tech issue, but as a trust issue. That's an issue about dignity. When the executives hear that, maybe they just don't approve, but champion it going forward. Because when you shift from logic to impact, leaders will stop reviewing and will start responding. Candace, any questions in the chat by any chance? Anything that came up in the chat or any questions itself?
No, there's just a question about your audio cutting out.
Oh,
Um, so yeah. So what I I'll put myself on mute.
okay.
I just put
Well,
myself on mute and then kept talking. So um, but let's see.
can you
Okay.
hear me well? I mean, is it, I've, yeah, is it an issue for everyone else as well?
Yes, that was what the question was. So it appears that your audio is yeah. If you want to try let's see. We could just see. I'm sorry. I'm just looking. And there's a bunch of static or something. What if you try just putting yourself on mute a little bit and then for a little bit and then trying again. So um I will say though, just in the storytelling, it could be an internet connection issue. But I will just say in the storytelling about the mother's story and um, the single mother kind of thing is in a previous life, I actually had dealt with financial and retirement stuff. And one of the things when we were talking about like tax things, which I can't believe I used to do that. But anyway, is we would talk about the impact of a single mother who was trying to save for retirement and everything and how whatever, you know, proposal or whatever would affect her. Because if you just talk about, like tax status and whatever, those are just two-dimensional numbers and people's eyes glaze over, however important they may or may not be. But if you put a face on it, um, that makes a totally different story. And there was a quote in the chat about um, how you make you feel and stuff like that. And it's very true because you can put a face to it. Why don't you try starting your audio again, Sabrina?
Okay, let's see. Hopefully this is better this time around.
Not really.
Oh
Um,
no, oh
do you
no.
want to let's see, Julia's suggesting that maybe you just log off and then log back in again, if that works. Just
You want
really
me to
quickly. That might help like basically refresh it. And that's okay. These technical problems happen a lot. So
leave the
it's
chat
not,
and then come back in again?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
sounds good. I'll do that.
yeah.
Okay,
No
sounds good.
problem, no problem at all.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I will put up the next poll question. And again, like I said, these technical problems happen a lot. So, but I'll put up the next poll question. Um, let's see. So, what's the reason most transformations fail in your organization? So the options are, people weren't ready, leaders weren't aligned, the vision wasn't clear, or the culture rejected the change. I think honestly, it probably depends on your particular organization, but it also might depend on what the project actually is, right? But and some of these actually it could be all of the above. But what's the primary reason why transformations tend to fail in your organization? Either things that you've been intimately involved in, or just that you're, aware of. Transformation is in quotes, by the way. That's a hard term to define, I suppose. Oh, here's Sabrina. Is that better?
I hope so. I'm hoping that everyone can hear what I'm saying now. Is that,
Slightly better.
is that,
But I'm gonna put myself on mute. But what I did is I just pulled up the third poll question, so people are answering that. So that's where we are right now. Um, so what the poll question is, what's the real reason most transformations fail in your organization? So I'm gonna put myself on mute right now in case that's helpful. But that's people are still answering. I think we're gonna give everybody a few more seconds.
okay? It's a lot of folks are saying we can hear you. We can hear you. Sounds fine to me. And then some folks are saying it's a bit staticky. Okay, okay, Elena. Thank you. It's clear. Should we just move on? Would that be okay? What do you think? Okay, great.
Yes. I'll end the poll right now then.
Okay, sounds good. I have seemed to have lost the way to. Oh, there you go. Vision wasn't clear. What's the real reason most transformations fail in your organization? Vision wasn't clear. That's interesting, right? So that means we're talking about people or an organization that may the presentations weren't clear. Maybe did we have ownership? Did we think through who was going to work on next. These are all the things that matters. We'll talk about these techniques as we're moving forward. Thank you for that. Okay. Apologies again, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't hear me or if there's staticky, I'll try to kind of keep on going as it is. Okay, data and insight. Spare that. Fantastic. So on to our next technique. Let's be honest, right? We all say we are data-driven until we see a complex dashboard, right? And say, you know what? Let's just go back to our Excel file. How many times has that happened to you? Our third technique. How do you use data and insight to show the evidence? Right now, only 29% of employees actually use data to make decisions, and the remaining 70% make their decisions based on emotion, how they're feeling, the story, etc. Right? Not because they don't want to, but because they get lost in the dashboards with 80 filters and charts that look like modern art. We've seen those, right? More isn't better. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes more is just more. You don't need another pivot table. You don't need another bar chart. Remember this, please. You need one insight, one meaning, and one action. That's how your data will cut through the noise. And here is where it gets real. By 2025, Gartner says data storytelling will be the primary way analytics will be consumed. No rows, no cells, just stories. Because remember, people don't remember dashboards. They remember decisions and how they felt making. Can we get to the next slide, please? Candace, if you would be so kind. Thank you so much. Great. So this is actually a real life story. This is something that I've been going through with my team in the past. Let me take you inside a room at Cigna. This is a real life example, as I mentioned. Our team was exploring automation for claim processing, but the enthusiasm was flat. There was change fatigue, legacy systems, competing tools. The conversation was buried in system specs, architecture, scalability, timelines, competing mandates. No one was moving. So we went back to the drawing board. We reframed it. I said, right now, are you aware that you're losing over 11,000 hours of patient coverage every single month? Because now it wasn't about infrastructure anymore. It was about impact. Real people, real care, real delays, dollars wasted. That single insight reframed the risk and reframed the decision. Within 90 days, the pilot was approved. One insight, one meaning, one action. Because data gets buy-in when it's translated into human impact. Okay, yeah. I know we did this next set of questions, Candace, so we'll just keep on going. unless
Yeah.
there's.
If anybody has questions or anything, there's the Q&A tab, or if you want to put questions in the chat, that's totally fine. But I was just re looking at your slide and data in action and everything, and it's like, hunches and guesses are great and they may reinforce whatever data you have, but people have different experiences. So hunches and guesses are not relevant for a lot of people. So you do need hard facts because especially when you talk about how many hours you're going to save or how many dollars you're going to save or something, that's really a big deal. People care about that. Money is a big, funding is always an issue.
So true.
So,
So true. And Candace, are there any questions in the question box? Anything that has come through so far?
no, not specific to the presentation, but like I said, your presentation is great. I loved your PowerPoint. So I think there's a lot here. But yes, yeah, the digital age is at hand. Yep.
Right. So true. The
Yeah.
digital age. Right, Elena, I agree. The digital age, the AI age is at hand as well. You're absolutely right.
Oh, AI. Yeah, there's
Right,
that.
right. So let's talk about what your slides actually do. Let's move to the next slide. I believe we just went through it, right? Thank you. So let's talk about what your slides actually do when you're not speaking. We're going to talk about visual framing, right? Here's the truth. Our brains process visuals 60,000 times faster than text. You know it, you've been there, right? But most decks still look like legal disclaimers. 10-point font, nested bullets. I call it grayscale confusion. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not communication. That's camouflage. If the slide doesn't speak for you in a room where you're not, it's not ready. The best slides don't decorate. They decide. One visual, one insight, one strong takeaway. Don't decorate slides. Design them to clarify, trigger, and move. Thank you, Brianna. Brianna? Thank you.
There's actually a question here. Oh, not to interrupt you, but I guess I will
No,
anyway.
great.
What do we do when the audience is low on empathy and or skeptical of facts? For instance, the general public. That's often the case.
Yeah, when the audience is low on empathy and or skeptical, right? There's many ways. What we like to do before we go into a presentation or we go into a hard hitting where we know this is a decision that needs to be made, we get a lay of the land. We get an idea who is going to be sitting in the room. I like to think of them, who are the yaysayers versus the naysayers, right? In terms of where do they sit in this, in the proposed solution? Are they going to come forward and join hands? Will they be part of the roadshow? Will they put their skin in the game? Or are they going to be more of the yes, but more of the passive yes and no action? What are we going to do? How do we then tell our story and ask for an action effectively? How do we make sure they are doing their bit? How do we include them as part of the presentation? If that answers
Yeah.
your question.
It's like when you're reaching different audiences, you may be trying to have the same mission, get to the same objective, but you have a different story to tell using the
Right.
same facts, but a different
Right.
story to tell depending on who
That's
your
right.
audience is, like where their perspective is, how much knowledge they have,
Right.
whatever. So it sounds like that's part of
That's so
what you're
true.
saying. That's a really good question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, great thoughts, Candace. Keep them coming. So what does clarity look like in action, right? Here's a quick before and after. On the left, we have common reporting language, dense, hesitant, buried in qualifiers, technically accurate, but it doesn't land. It takes effort to really see what it means. On the right, the same data is reframed visually. Now the story is clear. Performance improved, revenue grew, retention rose. No ambiguity, just outcomes. The same shift is happening in the pie chart above. Look, instead of explaining verbally that 38% of users had issues and 62% were resolved, You show it. Do you see how your eye quickly grasps the balance? This kind of visual framing helps decision makers move faster, but with more confidence. And below, you'll see what we call a clarity shift from heavy, cluttered narrative to sharp, outcome-driven messaging. Because when you transform complexity into clarity, when you pair strategy with visuals, you're not just informing, you're leading. That's the power of visual framing. And it's something anyone, especially you, can learn to do. Okay, Candace, as we
We have
move
our
to
next
the
poll
last-
question.
Yes, please go
So
ahead.
I will launch that. What do you want to be remembered for when the deck is long forgotten? And as
Right.
people are answering that, we have two questions.
Yes.
So the first one is, how do you decide on the theme? So color, photos, etc. Before you answer, I will just give a heads up that if you look at the recent GovLoop data guide, there is a little section on what kind of visuals and stuff to do. So just, whetting your appetite on that. But how do you decide, Sabrina, on things on the theme like color, photos, and such? I mean, it's not the main focus of your presentation, but it is important.
Absolutely, very important, right? So in terms of that, I would always say, try to go, for me, my preference, this is a personal preference too, but I like to go neutral. I like to put the focus on the data or that insight that we've been talking about. So in terms of font, try to use, of course, cater to what your stakeholder is used to seeing. Don't bring in a flashy a presentation with different color schemes because you have a great color palette to really bring it forward. That's not the time to shine in front of presenters, if I may say so. Use something that the stakeholders have seen before in a format that they have seen before. That's in terms of colors and font and usage of such. Having said that, the conversation around the data point and the insight you're trying to build should be using and exemplifying images and thoughts and mirroring the story you're trying to tell. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, Candace, was there
Yeah, I
another
think
one?
so. I will, I'll give everybody just a couple more seconds to answer the question. This is just as a reminder, this is the poll question. This is the fourth poll question. You need to answer all of them to be able to get your CBE credit. So I'm going to close it out in just a moment now. So
Right. And
okay.
for the question, there's a couple of things. It's interesting, the impact. So the question was to really kind of get your emotional signature when you leave the room. That's why I wanted to ask that, if you will. How do you define your emotional signature? And the fact is, what I'm reading is that you want impact. How hard is your message hitting others, if you will? And I'm seeing humanity. That's great. So here it is the stories that you tell. It's what you're hearing. That's what you want to be known for. That's fantastic. Okay, right? And I think I'd seen a previous question, if I may. It says, what Sonia had asked, what if you haven't engaged with the partisan before? Should I go with a neutral color? Yes, you should. Again, neutral is always a better bet than anything else. Fantastic. Thank you, Melissa. That's great to know. Okay, moving on, if we will. On to our the fifth technique, if you will. Here's the truth about most presentations. They don't fail in the middle. They fail at the end. The final 90 seconds of your presentation carry more weight than the 30 slides that came before. And yet, this is when most people start trailing off, they summarize, they thank people, they fade out. But in high stakes setting, the end isn't a wrap up, it's the moment of decision. So here's the play. First, speak to the tension. Don't be afraid to name what's at stake if nothing changes. What's the cost of inaction? What's the risk of staying comfortable? Second, bring it back to the human. Reignite the emotional core that opened your message. Whether it was a personal story, a customer challenge, a frontline moment, make it count. Then make a call for movement. Don't just seek alignment, demand it. What needs to happen next? And who needs to act? And finally, don't fade, intensify. Your energy should peak at the close, not taper off. This is where change begins. Treat the end like an ignition switch, because in rooms that matter, it's the final moments they decide whether to follow you or not. Okay. Again, in the chat, right, as you're writing your thoughts down, can you think about the last time you gave or participated in a presentation? Can you share a word or a phrase with the group on how you felt? Maybe you participated in a presentation and you thought about something. How did you feel coming out of that room? If you could give one word, that'd be great. Encouraged, engaged, fantastic, great. They're doing their jobs then, or you're really good presenters. That's fantastic. Well, okay.
It's so right, because I do think I agree with you. I think a lot of people forget about the closing, because sometimes you may just be so happy that you you made it through, that you kind of feel like whatever you just said kind of speaks for itself. But it's true. Your closing is what people remember the most. So
Right.
you want
Right.
to end with a bang, not a whimper. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. And I saw one relieved. I don't know if you were relieved because the presentation was over or because the story was just hard hitting. So that made me laugh. That was great. But the rest of them are very positive. So I really like that. That was great. Okay. So moving then to the closing, if you will, to really making this example, right? And, this is not so much as an example. This is what you're living through right now. Let's go through this real world scenario. You're experiencing this right now. What you're experiencing right now in the government sector with the jobs going away, with the pressure on the agencies to do more with less, showing your value before the next chopping block comes through. What if you are dealing with a 25% vacancy rate? That's the new normal, and you have to do all this extra work. Critical roles are unfilled. You have a hiring freeze. Multiple desks have been vacant for 34 plus days, and you still have to perform like your life depended on it. Right? You want to overcome that scenario. So you present a case to fill these seats. You present a detailed, data-rich briefing with your insight, real moments, and emotion woven in. Your charts are sharp. The insights are stellar. But when it came to close, you just summarized. No next steps, no call for action, no urgency. No one pushed the stalled AI initiative. No one prioritized the vacancies and the additional workload. The moment passes. This is what I call a commitment gap, when strong analysis is wasted because the close doesn't move the room. And it is avoidable. What if you had used the tools we just walked through? What if you had spoken to the tension, reactivated the human cost, and issued a call to move? Would you be looking at a different outcome? Because presentations don't fail because the content was weak. They fail when clarity doesn't convert to commitment. So how do you change this around? What if you took what we talked about and sharpened your closing message? Instead of ending with metrics, you reframed the numbers into a meaning. You said when closing, there's a 25% vacancy rate. That's just not a staffing issue. It's a crisis. It means 10,000 families this month alone are stalled in the system. With no AI replacing that desk, we have people waiting for food assistance, medical care, housing support. They're waiting because we haven't staffed up. What are we going to do about it? What is our next step? Who in this room is going to lead the charge? Maybe, just maybe, that starts the conversation. Maybe now that empty desk is seen more than a staffing issue. Maybe it becomes that symbol of urgency. What if after you move that needle, they stopped referring it to as the vacancy rate and start calling it what it really is? Days of dignity lost for every family left waiting for food, care, or shelter. That's the power of a sharp human close. When you tie data to real human states, when you frame numbers as lived consequences, you're not just informing, you're provoking action. And when you end with the call for next steps, who will do what, by when, you shift the room from passive agreement to active ownership. That's accountability. It means someone leaves the room not just aware of the problem, but on the hook for fixing it. And as you do that, you are solidifying your position. As an empathetic thought leader, you're bringing insight, you're being applauded for the value you bring to the conversations. Now your performance isn't just being seen, it's respected, it's being remembered.
I love that. Days of dignity lost. I like that. Everybody, no matter who you are, where you come from, whatever, wants to be treated with dignity. And I think that's a really human way to put it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron Gordon. Thank you. That's great. I'm glad they're being helpful to you. So
There's
let's
a
bring it all
question.
together. Sorry,
Oh,
Candace.
I'm
Yes,
sorry. There's a question
there's
here.
questions. Okay.
What do you do about the meeting after the meeting? So your point has landed with clarity, but there's a meeting after your meeting in which you're not attending. So during this meeting that you're not part of, plans revert back. So how do you proceed?
So that's part of what I call behavior adoption management, right? So now you had people who were psyched about it. You got to their bottom line. They want to put their skin in the game. But something happened between that and the next day or the week after where it fell through. What about maybe following up with that person one-on-one, the person who may be on the fence, who may have not understood it? Maybe if there's another meeting that's occurring without you, why not try to have that meeting with the person who is part of that leadership team? Make sure they understand the story you are trying to tell. Make sure they know that you're bringing a reasoning and they carry that reasoning into their next meeting. At least that's my advice.
There's a comment a little earlier. I'm sorry. I was going to say I don't mean to interrupt, but I guess I do. So, so somebody said the last time she did I need better glasses. A webinar with my teammate. We got hundreds of good reviews, but the 4 bad and 10 moderate ones had me disappointed. So definitely going to try these notes for our presentation at our festival, which is awesome. But it's totally human nature. You get overwhelmingly positive, but the bad ones or the less positive are the ones that stick in your mind.
That's
right. Totally human.
That's right. So let's bring it all together. Every presentation is a leadership moment. Whether you're pitching, briefing, or updating, your words shape decisions, behaviors, and trust. So how do you lead through the message? You inspire action, not with fluff, but with purpose. You drive accomplishments by anchoring your story in evidence that feels urgent. You build trust by making data human, digestible, meaningful. You create focus by resisting the temptation to say everything and instead zero in on what matters most. Because the best data stories, they don't start with dashboards. They start with people such as yourselves. That's how you shift outcomes. That's how you lead change. That's how you make impact stick. So you might be thinking, hey, Sabrina, thank you for these 5 techniques. I'll use them, but do they really work? Well, I'll tell you at Vanbri, we're not in the business of making slides. We're in the business of making decisions faster and stickier. What that means is when we worked with the GSEs, with Wall Street leaders, with our federal sector partners, with international organizations worldwide, we don't hand over decks. We deliver moments that change minds. First, leadership re-engagement. If you use these tools, we have helped reactivate 92% of previously misaligned or disengaged leaders. People who were checked out, resistant, started leaning in because the message finally met the moment. Second, faster time to decision. We have seen decisions move up 6 times faster than agency baseline, not because the information changed, but because the framing did. And third, freedom from funding gridlock. $38 million in funding are programs that were unblocked, not through lobbying or escalation, but through sharper storytelling, clearer asks, and well-timed persuasion. These aren't just communication wins. In our book, these are transformational outcomes, because when we end our presentation with clear ownership, action steps, and urgency, we stop updating and you start leading. That's the difference. So here's the reset, right? When you walk into your next meeting, I'd like you to do something here. You've heard me talk about the 5 techniques. Don't just present, do this instead. Find the human in your process. Craft the message that makes them lean in. Deliver it like the stakes are real, because they are. Don't wait for the next all hands. Try this. Apply it within the next 10 days. Pick 2 techniques we talked about: storytelling, maybe visual framing, sharp close, emotional resonance, or even just reworking your metrics. Build a better message, one that moves, not just informs. Try using a story instead of stats. Clarify what's at stake. And finally, track the response. Do you get faster feedback? Maybe sharper engagement? Maybe a quicker decision? Even a single head nod or pause at the end of your message means you've hit the mark. But because, here's the truth, by the way, these tools will only work if you use them. And when you do, your next presentation will set you apart from your peers, right? So, final thoughts, right? As we move forward, let me leave you with this today. The way you come across and deliver the message can change everything. Not because of how polished it is, but because how clearly it moves people from confusion to clarity, from hesitation to momentum. President Obama had said, and you may remember this, one voice can change a room, and if it can change a room, it can change the world. That's just not rhetoric. I've seen it happen in rooms where fundings were stuck, where the leaders weren't aligned, where teams were ready to quit. And then someone told the story differently, and the room shifted. That's why we created a free Vanbri playbook for you. It's in the resources section. This is our field-tested reference guide built for you. From real high-stakes transformation to work across government, banking, global institutions, and beyond. These tools aren't just theoretical, they've helped me. They've helped us re-engage, remember those 90% of disengaged leaders, unlock those $38 million in stalled funding, or accelerate decisions up to 6 times faster. You might say, well, Sabrina, how do I use this? Well, it's free. Go in there. If you take the executive, for example, the executive 5% brief, use it to craft your next update, to sharpen your message into a strategic ask. Use the human friction map when resistance is slowing progress. Maybe bring the call to action slide to build that strong close and move decisions forward. And here's the part, if you haven't listened to anything else in this presentation, I hope you really pay attention to this. In these crazy times, when is in flux and we don't know what's going away or what's next or what's coming back and how it may impact you, you don't have to go it alone. If you're in a complex change setting, facing pressure, or just need to reframe fast, please reach out. We are based in DC area. We are doing this free of charge. We want to do something for our government peers, if you will. It's completely free. No pressure, no prep, just come as you are. We know the churn in the government is very much real. We want to give you that neutral third voice when internal dynamics are blocking progress. We want to provide you clarity when decisions feel foggy. We want to offer you at least a little bit of leadership relief. Maybe you come out of it feeling lighter, more focused, ready to lead forward. Because when public leaders like you have the right tools and support, change doesn't just get talked about, it gets done. Thank you for your time today. I hope to meet and get to know each and every one of you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. This is wonderful. And from the, I told everybody it was a great presentation, and everybody seems to agree. The comments are wonderful. So we ran out of time, which I can't believe. So I want to thank, in addition to your presentation and everything, go back to the slide presentation is under resources. And you're going to get, like I said, you're going to get in your inbox tomorrow a link to the session on demand, and there are going to be more resources, and the playbook that you reference should be there as well. So if you, I just want to thank everybody, in addition to you, the 2025 NextGen Partner Alliance, for helping us put on today's summit. And I'm sorry, technology just doesn't work for me sometimes. Okay, the 2025 NextGen Partner Alliance, all these wonderful sponsors who helped provide this content that you had today. The next up is our keynote lunch is at 12:30 Eastern time, so you can access those sessions by going into the sessions tab into the main environment. And don't forget to fill out your CPE evaluation form. You can do that by going to the resources section back in the main environment. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope Sabrina and everybody else, I hope you have a really wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Candace. Appreciate it. Take care. Cheers.